Hi, welcome to Azure User Group Sweden. Hi, Håkan. We're back again with a new live stream and a new session.
Hello, Jonah. How are you?
I'm great. I recently got back from a conference from Poland, Azure Day Poland, last night actually. So I'm still like recovering being back home, but I'm so glad that we're not missing this session and we have a good session today. How about you? How have you been?
Yeah, it's been great here. The spring, you can feel the spring is coming. So still some snow left, but it's +degrees here in the air, so that's good.
Okay. Yes, I think it's cloudy day today. We have I think 5, 6 degrees, but it was a transition actually being in Poland, Warsaw for like 17 degrees and then switched to the cold Nordics. But I think spring is coming here. Other countries are ahead of us. But I'm so glad to be back. And I know that this is our first and only session probably in March because in 2 weeks, I mean next week we're traveling to the Microsoft MVP Summit at the Microsoft headquarters. So both of us will be there. So we're skipping the community work, and we'll be there at learning instead of us learning out. So it's great. So let's do the introduction, Okan. I would like to introduce you first. So to those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. Here with me today is Håkan Silvernagel, who is my co-leader at Azure User Group Sweden. He's also a fellow Microsoft MVP for AI. He is a Microsoft certified trainer, also a community lead like me, and he's one of the community leaders of Norwegian.net user group. He's also involved with the AI community and very active as a speaker, speaking at conferences. And it's an honor to have Håkan with me as my collaborator at this community that we do in our spare time for the last years since we started this group. So glad to have you, Håkan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonah. So it's an honor for me to introduce Jonah Andersson. She's the founder of our Meta group. And in addition to that, she's an Azure MVP. She's a Microsoft certified trainer, and she's a public speaker and a podcast host, and also an author for the book Learning Microsoft Azure on O'Reilly. And she is also working as a senior Azure consultant for herself on Jonah Andersson Tech.
Yes, I recently quit my job and work for myself. A flying independent woman. Thank you, Håkan, for the good introduction. And before we release the good code of conduct, I know that we have some achievements today. Would you like to start to share your achievements, Håkan? Because I know you have some milestones also that you shared on LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure. Yes, actually, last week I shared a milestone here that I was able to pass 30 Microsoft certifications. So I think I'm very happy about that. And I think the important thing to take away here is that you can learn, bit by bit, and it's a continuous learning journey. So I took my first certification in 2011. So this is something which is like an ongoing marathon to do continuous learning.
That's great, Håkan, and congratulations. I don't think I have that much certifications.
Thanks.
Very well deserved for your effort. And also, I would like to share my milestone about like the new release of my new edition of my book that I recently shared this week, Learning Microsoft Azure. So instead of the cloud computing and development fundamentals, it's going to be the second edition is more like the enhanced version, focus more on still the same fundamentals but more like intermediate to advanced level with AI native injected in it. So I'm still working on the first few chapters. So the one that's released is the raw and unedited. It's not even tech reviewed, so it's not final. But this book is gonna be like from 14 to 16 chapters, and hopefully more hands-on. So this is a 1 year project that I will be busy. But if you want to read this early release, give feedback, interested to be an early reader when it's before it's final, for free to scan the QR code. I do have actually some vouchers to share to those that don't have any O'Reilly account. So feel free to reach out if you're interested. I don't want to waste the QR code to just like anybody. So if you're very interested, feel free to read it and I'll give you the code. But I know that we need to ask our guest speaker, Davide, to share his milestone as we introduce him. But before we start, let me just go ahead and share our code of conduct. So at Azure User Group Sweden, we follow a code of conduct. We are part of Azure Tech Groups in Sweden. If you take a look at the entire map, we have a big community around the globe, and we follow a code of conduct. We are a community for the community, and we expect everybody to be nice and friendly, respectful, and of course, open to share your ideas and inclusive to all interactions that we have, both online. This session is recorded, so if you missed it, you have the option to interact as well later on or reach out to us. But if you feel like you have any concerns or feedback or any tips for improvements also for our community, feel free to reach out to us and join our user group on Meetup. And then we will be having actually at our like session typical like after session fika. So sometimes we run out of time at the interaction and it goes long. So to respect each other's time, we end the stream, but you do have the option if you have more questions to the speaker or interact with me and Okan, we have like a virtual session of Zoom meeting private to those who join and just have a casual discussion with your favorite drink, cold or warm, or just water. All right, Håkan, it's time to present our guest today. It's
Yeah, so we are very happy here to have our speaker, Davide Belloni. So let me add Davide here on stage. Welcome.
Ciao, ciao. Thanks for having
ciao.
me.
Welcome.
So a short, more formal introduction here is Davide is a principal backend developer and a content creator and also Microsoft MVP. He's been developing software with .NET since 2014, along with other technologies such as SharePoint, ASP.NET, MongoDB, Docker, and Azure. And he loves to explore new tools and libraries, going the extra mile when writing blog posts and delivering tech sessions. And he also runs Code for It, .dev, which is a tech blog where he shares tips and tricks for .NET and Azure developers, and in general, stuff that most backend developers will find interesting.
Yes. Welcome, Davide. I like interesting and great profile you have. So nice to meet you virtually and hope to see you also in person.
Maybe
I don't think we met in person yet.
No, not yet. But maybe, who knows, when all the conferences around Europe, maybe someday.
Yes.
So, Davide, would you like to share some words here about what our viewers can learn here from your session today?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen and start with the presentation. If you
Yep, sure. Let me add screen. So.
Oh, wonderful. So, well, again, thanks for being here. And well, as you know, today I'm going to talk about configuration management, in particular with Azure App Configuration. And of course, we will also talk about feature flags. Let me start directly with the agenda of today. We have a couple of things, and it's a gradual trip from something pretty easy, pretty common, to something more advanced. In fact, today we will start with the simple, app settings file that everybody working with a .NET project already knows. We will see briefly the 4 typical ways to read configurations in .NET, even though I'm generally used to only use one and use it across every project, but it's interesting to know that actually there are at least 4 ways, and we will see briefly each of them. Then we will move to Azure configuration. So we will move to the cloud and learn how to create, configure, modify, and read, consume the configurations from Azure App Configuration. And finally, for the last part, we talk about feature flags, what they are, how to use them in .NET locally, but also how to configure them on Azure App Configuration so that we can move all the parts from the local environment to the cloud. As Jonah and Håkan correctly said, my name is Davide Bellone, and they pronounce it pretty well. That's great, and it's not easy, trust me. So wonderful. I'm a principal backend developer based in Turin, northern Italy. I'm a Microsoft MVP. You can find all my content, most of my content, on my personal blog, codeforit.dev, in which I share stuff that basically are of interest for myself, because for me, blogging is learning and sharing, and by sharing, I learn more. So I start with something that is interesting for me, that I think that even others might find interesting, and I'm pretty happy with it. And you can find me on LinkedIn and on Blue Sky. My name is, well, it's pretty basic. It's Bellone Davide, so it's easy to find. And well, I would say again, welcome to this session, and let's start. And let's start with a bright orange. Yeah, it's something to grab your attention. Let's start with this simple usage of appsettings.json. I think that, again, most of you already know how to use appsettings.json. I don't know if everybody of you knows how to use it properly in a more advanced way, slightly more advanced way. In general, when you have a .NET project, you see that this appsettings.json file pops up. And what is that? Of course, it's a JSON file. Key, value, key, structure of sub-values, etc., etc. In this case, I have this key named my key. Yes, it's a dummy name, of course, with a value. Or we have the connection strings with some children. So the name is storage, and the value is my connection string. Or we have this sort of root element named feed info, which contains two elements. One is feed URL to this URL, and another one is items to show. That is a number. So the first thing I wanted to highlight, that is not always that obvious, is that it's a JSON. You can place whatever you want. You can place a string, you can place a Boolean, you can place a URL, you can place a number, as long as it's a valid JSON. But that's not enough. As I highlighted here, let me use the data pane in PowerPoint. Okay. As I highlighted here, you can have more than one appsettings.json file. For example, you can have a appsettings.development.json file. What is that? Notice that here in the appsettings.json, we have this feed info node with feed URL and items to show. Item to show, the value is 8. Okay, I can create a new JSON file, name it appsettings. In this case, development JSON, and say, hey, I want you to override this specific value. So feed info, items to show, use the value 4. All the rest, take it from the root, from the base settings file. But for this specific value, use the value 4. Wonderful. So we can create variations of the different appsettings. But now the question is, what is this .development JSON? Where does it come from? It's, in short, the environment value. The environment value. so the name of the environment that we are using. And it's important that you can set it up directly on your environment, or by using .NET run --ASP.NET Core environment equal to development, .NET run -- environment, so the shorter version, equal development. Development is just a name. You can use whatever you want. You can use upsettings.davide.json. It will work as long as there is a match between the name of the environment and, of course, the substring of the file name. So upsettings.davide.json. So you can start by creating different variations of the file, one for development, one for the QA environment, one for the North America environment, one for the Europe EMEA environment. You can do whatever you want. You start with the baseline upsettings JSON, and then you create different variations by replacing only the tiniest part that you need. So now, how can we read configurations in C#? And let's start by learning these famous 4 ways that I mentioned before. And let's start with the easiest one, IConfiguration. IConfiguration is, of course, an interface, and of course, you have to inject it using a dependency injection, but allows you to do something specific. Configuration.getValue of type string, and then the name of the key. So not only the string, it's not always a string, but you can even use it for the integer, and it will return, of course, an integer type. You don't have to care about casting the values from string to whatever. You can just directly grab it and store it as a simple value. So you can go one element at a time. But how does it match with the upsettings.json file? It's all a game of using the right syntax. You have to use the colon sign to say, okay, here we have feed_info, feed URL, and as you can see, it matches the structure of the JSON, feed_info, and the child is feed URL. So you have to use the colon sign to go the level below. And you can, of course, follow the path to the value you need using the colon sign as a separator. So feed_info, feed URL will bring you to, of course, here. Feed_info, items to show, it will bring you to show, of course. But clearly, it can be cumbersome, expensive, boring to access all the single elements one by one. Why not converting them to a C# class, like this? Feed configurations. Okay, I created a class, feed configuration, which contains a feed URL of type URI, so it's not anymore a string, but it's already casted to URI, and items to show, which is an integer. Okay, we can do it, of course. But again, there is something not obvious. How can we instrument ASP.NET Core to say, hey, the name of the class is feed configurations. It doesn't match to anything. So this feed configuration does not appear as a name in the JSON. What can we do then? When we create the application, so in the program.cs, even though most of the time it doesn't exist anymore, but again, let's say in the program.cs, we say builder.services.configure, configure the name of the type in configurations, and say, hey, now I want you to create this the configuration, taking the value from the configuration section, so builder.configuration.section, named feed info. So even though the names do not match, with these instructions, we say, hey, this is the C# class, this is the JSON node, create the match, and it will work. So you don't have to care about having the perfect name, both in the JSON file and in configuration and in the C# class. You can do whatever you want, as long as you create a matching point between the two. But now that we have the class, we have to find a way to consume it from our services. And we can start with the easiest one, IOptions of T, a generic. So again, it's an interface. You inject it in the via dependency injection and say, hey, IOptions of feed configuration of the C# class, of course. You can store it, and you can access the elements using the .value property. And it will return, of course, the object already typed. Similar is the IOptionsSnapshot of it. And it does something almost identical. So IOptions of the generic type, you can save it, save the reference, and access the value using the .value property. Again, it's similar, not identical. We will see it in a few minutes. Finally, IOptionsMonitor. This is a little trickier. IOptionsMonitor allows you to get the latest version of the values, but in a reactive way. So first of all, you get the current value. It's not just the value, because with IOptionsMonitor, you can intercept the changes that happen on the configurations. That can be on your local configuration, that can be on the server, that can be on Azure App Configuration. IOptionsMonitor allows you to always get, every time you request it, the latest version of the configuration. And in fact, you have the .current value. So it's the value in this point in time. But also you have the onChange property, which is an event handler that allows you to react to changes that happened on the configurations. In this specific case, whenever something changes, the onChange event handler is triggered, and it will just print on the console updated. Okay, but then what is the difference between one and the other? It's all about how they react to change. IOptions, so the simplest one, is a singleton. All the options are populated at startup time. You spin up the application, you retrieve all the configurations, and they stay like that. You can change whatever you want, but as long as the application is active, the values do not change. It's a singleton, and they do not support reload. IOptionsSnapshot is something in between. It's a scoped dependency. What does it mean? It means that the application starts up, it reads the configuration, but then an HTTP call is incoming. Let's use it as an example for a scope in the .NET Core world. An HTTP call is incoming. It reads the configurations and keep them as long as the scope is alive. But if another configuration is coming, and maybe in between the configurations have changed, the second request contains different values of the configurations because it's another scope. So if something changes in between, the change is valid, but it's consistent and coherent internally of a single scope. Two different HTTP calls can contain two different values of the same key. IOptionsMonitor is even more reactive. It's a singleton, yes, but it reacts to changes to the configuration. What does it mean? The application starts up, a scope is created, an HTTP call is incoming, a scope is created. You read the configuration, something happens on the Azure App Configuration or whatever. Even though you are internally the same scope, the value has changed. So in a single operation, you can end up with two different values for the same configuration. It can be tricky, but it can be useful, but it can be tricky. So yeah, that's why we have these three most famous ways to read configurations from .NET and cast them to objects. So one is a singleton and it's alive for the whole lifetime of the application. One is alive for the whole scope. One is for reactive changes. And this is the real change. Now, before moving to Azure App Configuration, I wanted to show you a baseline of what we are going to see in the demo. So let me close this one here. Okay. If you have questions, I'm happy to reply. So just ping me. But now let's start with the simplest demo. It's nothing but a single on-page application. It's done in Razor. It's .NET, nothing fancy, of course. But what I wanted to highlight is that, first of all, I can close this one here. Okay, wonderful. I have, of course, the appsettings.json file, which is more or less what you already saw in the slides. We have the key, we have the connection string, we have the feed info with items to show value is 4. We have some labels. This part here, we are going to see them later. But let's focus on this one here. Okay, now I run the application. Is the program.cs is nothing fancy, honestly. It just contains the feed configurations as we saw before. So let's do it like this. Maybe it's more readable. Okay, nope. Okay. So we expect to see a simple page. Again, nothing pretty amazing, because of course this is the baseline. Let's start the application. And here we are. Okay, wonderful. We have, again, a label, a subtitle, the number of elements, some text. This is some of the articles I published. So this application reads from the RSS feed of my blog and shows some titles and descriptions, nothing fancy. But look at this. Here you have 6 items. But if you recall, here in the settings JSON, I asked for 4 items. What happened? That's easy. As we mentioned before, I have this appsettings.development.json that says, no, if you run in the development environment, this value must be 6. So again, this allows me to create a variation of the application saying, okay, what happens if in this development environment, I expect to see 6 elements? Let's see. That's pretty easy. You can create whatever you want here, and of course override whatever comes from this baseline appsettings.json. Okay, now we have the baseline for our demo. Let's move to something more interesting, maybe, like Azure App Configuration. And let's jump directly to something stronger. again, this bright orange, just to burn your eyes. I know. Now, why Azure App Configuration? And in general, why do we need to move our configurations away from our local environment and place them on the cloud? First of all, because, well, it's useful having a centralized place for all our configurations. We can move them in Azure because, well, of course, if we are already working on Azure, we don't have to care about configuring too many stuff, etc. It's already there, it's already available, and it's already integrated with the Azure ecosystem. Of course, it's Azure, clearly. But it also allows you to override on your local machine only what you need. As long as you create the right connection string pointing to Azure configuration, you can remove everything from your local app settings. Say, okay, use the connection string for the dev environment, and then override only those specific keys, only the label of the title, only the number of elements to show, because everything else is already on cloud. And you can focus on what really matters to you. But then it allows you to have fewer errors because everything is already centralized. You don't have application, you don't have configuration scattered everywhere. Sometimes it happens to have something on your local settings, something defined at CI/CD runtime during CI/CD, something on Azure App Configuration, and then you deploy it on Kubernetes, then you have the config. Well, it's a mess. It's better to have one single point that you can open and you can see everything. You can see the current status of your application for that environment. It's easier. It's easier to spot something that is wrong. It's easier to debug. So yeah, you have the higher level view of the configuration. You can see everything. And what is interesting is that with Azure App Configuration, you can even restore the previous version of a configuration key. You can say, oh, no, okay, I was wrong with that. Roll back to the previous version. And then everything is updated. Next, it's important to care about security because it happens to have the connection string stored on your local app settings. And then forget about it and push the code on GitHub or Azure DevOps or whatever. And you are exposing some strict secrets on Git. Because, yes, it's secure as an environment. But it's better to avoid it. Then this will allow you to prevent configuration leak. Of course, the only point to care about is the connection string to Azure App Configuration. But it's you are minimizing the risk. And then for secrets, you can integrate Azure App Configuration with Azure Key Vault. So it's a secondary level of security. So it's great. But what I like the most is that with a centralized place like Azure App Configuration, you can share the configuration across multiple applications. Now, suppose you have the typical microservice environment where maybe different services interact with a single database, hopefully in different schemas. But again, they all point to the same database. With a centralized environment, you can, in case, replace the connection string or refresh the authentication token, and all the applications are already updated. You don't have to update all the single applications in your system. You can update the configuration key once and have it applied everywhere. And also, it applies to multiple teams. You have the, I don't know, the team that works for products, the team that works for the cart, the team that works for the advanced search. You can switch a configuration, you can change something, and all the teams are aligned to that specific new value. Another common use case is having some configurations common for multiple environments, like I have a single Azure App configuration for development, for QA North America, for QA South America, for QA Europe, Asia, and whatever, and then a separate instance for production. So you can use the same instance of Azure App Configuration, even it works best for when you have a lot of configurations and you want to pay less, even though for the basic stuff it's free. But of course, for more advanced scenarios, you have to pay for Azure App Configuration. Maybe to avoid spending too much, you can reuse the same instance of Azure App Configuration for multiple environments. And well, it works. It's great. It's useful, and it's easy to manage. So now let's see finally a demo, something more interesting. Let's move directly to Azure. We are here. Okay. Okay, we are here. Clearly, you know how Azure works. You already know this screen. You have the resource group, you have the location, you have the subscription ID, and pricing tier, and whatever. And we can jump to Configuration Explorer. Something that I didn't mention is that you can actually export and import configuration to and from different systems. It's nice. You can export it as a configuration file and import it to maybe another environment. By the way, let's get back to the Configuration Explorer. Here we are. It's, in short, a huge table. Honestly, the UI is not the best. It's not that easy to use sometimes when you need some advanced stuff to do. But right now, we can keep it like that. By the way, the table is pretty easy. You have the key, you have the value, which is hidden by default, but you can, of course, show all the values, and you can add a new element, create from an existing element. So create a clone and create a reference to Azure Key Vault. So there is a lot of stuff that you can do. Right now, we have the title, and the title says from Azure. Hey, this value here comes from Azure. Like latest content from a placeholder. While items to show is, let's spin up the previous version of the application just to see what's the current status. Right now we have local, so it's a different label, and we have 6 elements. Okay. Now, what can we do? Let's select that just in case. Okay. What can we do? Well, first of all, I have to move to the right Git branch. Undo. And let's move here. So the first demo with Azure App Configuration. Now, here, what else we have? How can we add the reference to Azure App Configuration? First of all, we have to say, hey, builder.configuration. So in the list of all the configuration sources that you can use, Azure App Configuration, using, of course, the connection string. But it's not enough. We have to say, hey, please builder.services.add Azure App Configuration, because it's not just having a different source. We also have to find a way to connect to Azure App Configuration. And lastly, we need to add the middleware. So, okay, you are working, but I want as a middleware the connection to Azure App Configuration. So yes, of course, there are 3 steps to do, but as you can see, it's pretty easy. Let's run the application and let's see what happens. Takes a while. Oh, let's see. Oh, okay. Of course, from Azure. So this value comes from Azure Configuration, and there are easy. I did not update anything else, but now the owner, let's say, of the configuration is on the cloud. If I change something there, I will see the change here on the local machine. But we can do something even more interesting. As I mentioned, we can use the same instance of Azure App Configuration for different environments. How can we do it? We should use something called labels. A label is just a variation of the same key applied to different environment with a different tag. So, for example, now for items to show, I want to have 10 as a default value, but maybe for the environment I call demo, I want the value to be 7. Let's do 7. So now I choose the key, I click the button and say create from existing. Now I can create the variation. I say 7, and as a label, I will call it demo. Easy. Of course, demo can be the staging environment, it can be the North American environment, it can be whatever you prefer. Okay, now we have the same key with 2 different values, one as a default, one for the demo. How can we use it in our code? Well, we have to change something, change a bit how we use and how we integrate Azure App Configuration here in the program.cs. So in builder.configuration, let me find, okay, this one. We have to change it a little bit. So we have to say builder.configuration. Okay. I think that GitHub already knows me. Okay, we have to say, yes, clearly connect using the connection string, like this. Wonderful. But then select the labels, the keys, with no value at all. So take everything, and then demo. We can skip like that. Okay. Boom. It's like this. Okay. It says, okay, first load all the key configuration keys with no label at all, and then override the values for those who have the demo label. Now I can expect to see, when I run the application, exactly 7. It was 7 elements. Exactly 7 elements because the name matches the label I expect. So let's see. Oh yeah, we now have only 7 elements. 7. Okay. And again, this is incredibly useful if you use the same instance of Azure App Configuration for multiple environments. You don't have to create a lot of instances. You don't have to manage a lot of them. You don't have to manage a lot of connection strings to them. You can use one single instance and create the variations. So you have a lot of freedom to do whatever you prefer. So let's jump back to the slides and see some best practices for the usage of Azure App Configuration. I forgot to mention a little bit have you noticed the name of the key? It's exactly the same pattern that we saw when we used the iConfiguration. So the colon sign is used as a separator. You cannot create the real structure of a JSON file, but you can create the flattened version of the JSON file using, again, the colon separator for moving to the level below. Okay, time to get back again to the slides. It was here, and let's see again the best practices. And we can start with exactly what I just mentioned. Key grouping. So use proper names for the keys. Don't think that since on the UI they are flattened, you can use whatever name you want. Well, you can use, but it's not that handy. Maybe think of a logical grouping. Think that you are creating it as a real JSON. You can create the hierarchy of nodes, and then you flatten it. This will allow you to have a good understanding of the values of some specific area, because maybe you can search for a substring for the prefix and see all the labels related to that, all the configuration keys related to that. But also you can filter by label. So instead of creating, I don't know, items to show underscore demo as a single key, then you have items to show underscore all, etc. So instead of creating 10 different keys with 10 key names that are one variation of another, so numbers, all, numbers underscore demo, numbers underscore staging, you can just create a single key, number, and then use labels to create the variants. It will simplify a lot the management. As I mentioned before, avoid storing important references in your application in the settings, like connection strings, or maybe URLs, or tokens, or secrets, etc. But store them outside. And again, Azure App Configurations and the integration with Azure Key Vault is wonderful. But again, remember that to use Azure App Configuration, you need a connection string, of course, because otherwise, how can you connect to it? So remember to store it in a secure space. Maybe do not store it at all in your repository. Maybe store it on your local machine, on your environment variables. It's a good place. Maybe it's not always that safe. If some attacks try to read your environment variables, but what still better than having it as a plain text in your Git repository. So feel free to experiment and to consider that safety and easy to management is something important for your application. And now let's move to the last point of the day. So feature flags. And let's start with defining what are the feature flags. Why are they useful? So what are the feature flags? They are in short some dynamic switches that allow you to enable, disable some specific part of the application with just a setting. So you can maybe disable a whole area of your application without redeploying it. You can just click a button on, in this case, on Azure App Configuration, and have it disappear. Or on the contrary, now that area appears and is available to everybody. The important thing is that it allows you to enable or disable parts of the application without deploying the new code. And it will save a lot of time. So consider you have the application, you have to compile it, move it to dev, move it to staging, move it to production, but maybe you have to run a lot of tests, etc. It's a mess. With this, in this way, you can just, okay, I'm already in production. I can click a button and have this specific area available to a lot of people. So why using a feature flag is interesting and useful? Because again, you can have gradual rollouts that are hidden to most of the users, but already make it to production. Maybe, I don't know, I have an e-commerce, I want to introduce a smart search functionality. I can start working on it and releasing the UI part. Then maybe I move it to production and see what happens. Do users like, do beta users like the UI? Do I have to fix it? Okay, oh no, I don't know. Okay, now I can add some dummy search functionality. I move it to production. I can see it used by real users. I can gain feedback from it. And then I can add some real smart search and move it to production, etc. So instead of having a huge functionality to deploy at once, maybe it will take 6 months to deploy to develop it thoroughly. You can do it step by step, ensuring that it doesn't break everything else, and it's great. And with feature flags, you can have a lot of functionality because you can mix and match feature flags. You can have a part of the code available only if flag A and flag B are both enabled. So you can tweak with them. You can do a lot of stuff. Clearly, for safer deployments, you are already in production. You know that the code is working. Maybe it's hidden to most of the clients, most of the customers, but you know that the deployment per se is safe. And how can we use it on Azure, on a .NET application? First of all, you need a specific key, which is configurable, but this is the default name, called feature management. Easy. Here you can define all the feature flags that you need: header, footer, privacy page, and the value: true, true, false. Okay. Do we really need feature flags if it's just a Boolean? Why can't we use a simple configuration key? We will see it in a moment. But then, okay, now how can I use in the application a feature flag? Well, we can start with the simplest approach by using the iFeatureManager interface, having it injected in our code, and say, oh, is enabled. Notice now there is the is enabled async, but also the synchronous version exists. But then in this demo, in this example, feature manager dot is enabled async, then the name of the feature flag, and it will return a Boolean false. But it's not only that. You can actually create an attribute applied to maybe directly the whole page. So the attribute feature gate that says, hey, this whole page, this whole privacy model is visible, exists only if the privacy page flag is active. Otherwise, it's like it never existed. Or you can do it for specific areas. So the model exists. You can have the onGet method available, but you can sort of hide the onPost. So you can have control on the single specific parts. But you can do something similar for the controllers, like exactly again, using the feature gate attribute and say, no, this whole controller does not exist. Or you can have already the controller available, create a new action, and say, hey, this action is available only if this my flag name flag is active. So again, you can have control of the single specific functionality of, for example, an API controller. But again, it's not enough. In rest of pages, you have a specific tag that is driven by feature flags, like feature name header. So again, name of the feature flag, and then this paragraph, the header flag is on, is showed, is displayed, and generated only if the feature flag is visible. Otherwise, it's not just hidden. It really does not exist in the HTML. And as I mentioned, you can mix and match some feature flags to have something more complex, like, hey, this part in the HTML feature, consider that you have to show this paragraph if all the feature flags specified here, so header and footer, are active. Or maybe you can show this paragraph if any, okay, there's a typo, if any of the feature flag is active. So if header is active and footer is disabled, still show me this part. So you can try a lot with it. But I mentioned before that maybe if feature flags are just a Boolean, we could just use a configuration. The point is that, yeah, they look like a Boolean value, but you can have a more complex behavior based on what you really need. For example, I have this feature flag called show picture, and I want to use something called feature filter. A feature filter is something that says, hey, enable this feature flag in this specific case for this specific usage, let's say. In this case, this show picture feature flag is enabled for this filter named percentage, whose value is 60. What does it mean? That the 60% of the requests, not the users, the requests incoming, we see the show picture flag active. The other 40% is inactive. Again, it's worth mentioning it again. It's the percentage of requests, not the users. The same user may hit refresh many times and see different behavior, because this is the simplest one. And to use it, you say builder.service.add feature management, what we saw before, add feature filter, specifying the type of filter, in this case, percentage filter. Okay, but I think that now it's time for seeing it in action. If you got questions, wait. Sure. Okay, let's do it. Okay. Oh, well, we are here. Now, the branch is the right one. Let's see. Just give me a second. Okay. This is one. Okay, this is fine. This is fine. Okay, let's start the application. Well, I think that you already know it. And let's see what we have right now and what we do not have right now. Clearly, we have the title, the subtitle. Sorry, the subtitle here. We have a header, a title of a single element, the description, the link, and nothing more. But I want to release new functionalities for my application, but I don't want them to be live for everybody because I'm not sure it will break something. So I need feature flags to start experimenting with them. So in the program.cs, I have to add a couple of things. First of all, first of all, this one here, I would say. Builder.services.add feature management. So I'm saying, hey, look that I want to use the feature flags defined locally. So right now the feature flags is driven by my local app setting.json. And what else? Nothing more. Okay, we are here at feature management. In the index.cs file, I have this feature tag that says, hey, if the flag show link as button is active, then show everything as a button. Otherwise, keep using the plain text link. Interesting to say, the negate attribute. So if the feature flag is active, then do this one. If it's not active, so negate equal to true, do the other one. So you can again use the variation of the same thing. Then app settings, show link as button. Again, we are into the feature management node. Show link as button. Let's put it to true. No, even better. Let's keep it. Sorry, let's give it to false. Now I run the application in debugger. And again, I will see that currently the links are just plain text link. But without stopping the application, I can change the value here to true. Hit refresh on the page, not on the application. And again, I can see that now the links are buttons. I did not deploy anything else. I did not restart the application. I just hit refresh. And the application refreshed the feature flags. It's immediate. But now we can do something more interesting, maybe. Let's close it and say, okay, show link as button is true. Okay, boring. Let's do something maybe better. Oh, it's already here. So again, as I mentioned before, show link as button. Let's use the percentage filter. Let's use as value 50%. Let's use 40. You know what? Like that. Now, if I run it like this, it's not enough because as we saw before, we also have to add something more. And here in builder services add feature management, I have to say add feature filter, percentage filter. Wonderful. Now, if I run the application and hit refresh, I will see that on average, 40% of the requests of the loads will have the button, and the 60% will have the link, because this is driven by that feature filter that we saw before. Okay, now we have the button. Let's do like this. We have the button, link, 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 button. So the percentage of the request, not the user. Again, this is important because it can be tricky. So now we can move to Azure, of course. And to do that, well, of course, we have to use the UI. So we are here again. Let me zoom out a little bit. Under Feature Manager, here we have all the feature flags, and say, hey, show link as button. Of course, it's already here. And let's see how it's done. View. Right now is disabled. It has a name. It has no label. Again, here, even for feature flags, you can use labels as we saw before. And well, you can do a lot of stuff. And now let's enable it. Now that it's enabled, I can maybe, just in case, disable it from local and say here, instead of all of this, not this one closes here, and it goes like false. So now we are sure that it all depends on what we have defined on Azure App Configuration. Now, we know that locally, the feature flag is disabled. On Azure is enabled. Yep. Let's also enable this feature flag here. So, and let's see what happens. I run the application. I expect to see the buttons and the images. We will see them. Hey, we have the images, but we don't have the buttons. Why? This is pretty easy, because I did not add the reference to Azure App Configuration. Right now, if you recall, we are just using the feature filter, the feature management from the local machine, but we have to enable it. If I go here, well, it explains this commented out part. We say, hey, use Azure App Configuration and feature flag option. Use the feature flags, of course. And I want you to use the cache expiration set to 3 seconds. The default is 30 seconds. Now, if I run the application again, I can see that the application starts up. It sees that on Azure App Configuration, the value is enabled. And then I will see the buttons and also the images. Maybe I forgot a thing. In fact, I forgot this part here, sorry. Like this. Okay, clearly we have to say a .NET use as Azure App Configuration. Let's do it like that. And we are at the end of the session. Subscribe at Azure, right? It's this one here. Yeah. We can make it. So we expect to see both images and buttons. It's a little slow. Oh, hey, we have the images and we have the buttons. But as I mentioned, the cache is 30 seconds, and I set it to 3. What happens in reality is that if I change the value here and refresh the page, the value is still the same. But then afterwards, it takes 3 seconds, okay, to see the change. And now the feature flag is disabled because we have 3 seconds of the of cache expiration. And again, I can just move here again, refresh the page, and see that everything has changed without restarting the application, without redeploying the application. Hey, can you see me? I think I lost you on camera. Okay. Yeah, we can refresh the application, change how it behaves without redeploying anything, without restarting the application, just with a click. And it's available for a lot of people. And that's it. Let's wrap up. Let's see first some best practices for feature flags. And well, clearly you should use a single feature flag for controlling a single functionality. So if you are deploying the new search functionality, don't use the same flag for adding the dark theme on the UI, clearly. Also, if possible, to avoid mistakes, try not to scatter too much the same flag across multiple locations. Maybe you can use the feature flag to drive another configuration or to block directly the controller, the page, instead of moving to all the single parts. Maybe it's not possible. Again, try to be smart enough to minimize the possibility of errors for yourself. Something really important is that you have to consider also the current and fallback value. So whenever you are implementing a new functionality, don't just focus on the case in which the flag is active. Also remember what happens when the flag is not active, because maybe you have introduced a regression. Maybe you are not testing the right thing properly. So create tests for both the case of feature flag on and off. Lastly, as we saw before, use meaningful names for the flag and group them by level. And maybe one of the most important thing is that whenever you plan to release a new functionality, always remember to plan for removing the flag from the code. Once it's already published, once it's already stable, you have to remove it, because otherwise you will see hundreds of feature flags scattered across the code. It's a mess when maintaining it. It's a mess. So take this step and say, okay, I will release this functionality this weekend. I will give it 1 month to see if it's stable, and then I promise I will remove all the references from the code. If it's stable, I don't need it anymore. We can remove everything else. So it's important as a strategy when planning for functionality. And that's it. Let's wrap up what we saw before. We started with the basic usage of the app settings, the configuration, IOptions, IOptionsSnapshot, IOptionsMonitor. So you have a lot of stuff to work on when dealing with configurations locally. But of course, you can use them to work with configurations on Azure App Config, so moving it to the cloud. We learned what are the feature flags, where they can be useful, what are some maybe difficulties of using it, and what are some advanced scenarios like using the percentage. Or maybe you can create your own filters saying, hey, all the users whose name starts with Davide, I have the flag disabled. Okay, it's fine. I will take it personally, but it's fine. And then we moved and we learned how to use feature flags on Azure and consuming them from .NET. And yes, this is the really end. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for being here. You can find me on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. Honestly, mostly on LinkedIn at Bellone. And you can read my blog posts on codeforit.dev. Hope they will be interesting for you. And clearly, if you have questions, I'm open to it. If you have suggestions for blog articles, if I can find them interesting, why not? I'm always open to learn. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, so thank you so much, Davide. It was a really great session here.
Yes. I think there is an echo. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I had to switch a headset actually because this went low battery. So I hope you can hear me. We do have a question. Thank you, Davide, for the awesome session. I'm learning. I have a question myself, but I want to ask the question of one of our audience. So we're live streaming also on our LinkedIn page, and I see that Tako Susuyama. I know that he is from Japan. He's a big community member. He asked that. Let me just show it actually. He asked, could you tell me how to use app settings JSON, which you think is the most effective way to use it?
For that, I would say that you should consider it as a sort of helper for yourself, not as a technical part, but as a way for you to organize ideas and minimize, how can I say, minimize the effort for yourself to understand, okay, what are the configurations for this specific area? As I mentioned, behind the scenes, all the configurations are basically flattened. So .NET really doesn't care how you structure the app settings.json file. It's important to remember that it's something for you as a developer. It must be useful for you when you work on something. So maybe you prefer having everything on one single level as a single element, as a single standalone elements. Maybe you prefer working by modules and then by submodules. Maybe you prefer working on, I don't know, UI and then backend and then database and then stuff like that. It must be useful for yourself. I don't think there is a officially effective way to use it. It's something that depends on different teams and different person, different applications. To me, I prefer working by modules, like, I don't know, if I have to work on something related to users, I have maybe the users root node and then profile and the label and additional configurations and stuff like that, etc. Another part worth mentioning is that officially there is a standard way to deal with connection strings, and there is a specific node called connection strings. Easy, boring, but it's not necessary to use it. As long as you have a different name, you can do whatever you want. I used to have a node named secrets, something like that, maybe. And then the SQL connection string, MongoDB has connection string, whatever, using my own strategy, not necessarily the one that Microsoft, that .NET expects. So yeah, use it as the way that best suits your needs and the ease for you to use it.
Thank you for that. I do have. I hope Taco is satisfied with your with the answer. Feel free to follow up with David if there's anything else.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can continue with the discussion.
Yes, thanks for the answer. I do have a question because I put in a hat as a developer, but also as a DevOps, someone handle who kind of like responsible also with infrastructure, and I also think in their perspective and that perspective. So my question, which I actually put in on my YouTube just to show this, is that so others can hear as well. How does the feature flag with Azure App Configuration works with, like, for example, if you have infrastructure as code using Terraform or Bicep, sometimes, the common issue of like misconfiguration mismatch when the team of infra team, it has this automation of concrete settings for the app, and then developers make changes on the app settings in the local environment. But when it goes through the pipelines into the cloud, it actually is different. So I'm just curious, what's your perspective on that, or your experience, at least in your previous or existing projects?
Honestly, I don't have experience with IOC, Terraform, etc., but I can understand your point. I think that maybe feature flags are more about feature flags and Azure configuration are more for application settings, meaning the usage, etc. So Terraform and IOC should maybe focus more on the infrastructure, like what is the size of the virtual machine, what is the expected CPU or whatever. But having the functional configuration scattered across different parts can be terribly difficult to follow. And that's why most of us, myself as one of them, sometimes, often go directly to the Kubernetes, for example, pod, and open the console and type printenv to see all the environment variables, to see what is actually going on. So this happens because I'm not sure that all the configurations are on Azure App Configuration. If, as a company, as a team, we decided that this is the single source of truth, it will solve a lot of issues because they are available for everyone. If we learn that there are some specific requirements needed by Terraform, like the DevOps team using Terraform, we can say, okay, let's create maybe a specific prefix on Azure configuration for feature flags for other configurations that say, I don't know, DevOps _ memory limit, something like that, and say, okay, this is the source of truth. And you, as a IOC manager, user, can get all the configurations from there. So let's try and minimize the area of possible issues and possible configurations scattered everywhere. Yeah, I think that that would work. I don't know if I answered honestly your question.
I hear
pretty
your
specific
perspective.
Yours. I think that there is some pain behind that.
Yes, it's okay. You did try to answer your question as your perspective, because I want to hear your perspective. It's actually on a real project also, because we are using infrastructure as code, but there's always this challenge of feature flags, how you would set it up, for example, with Azure Front Door, and how would you integrate it with Azure App Configuration. And it also, it actually depends on, of course, the process and how teams work together, and how developers and everyone actually communicate, and how it is actually set up in the environment. But I know that there's as I'm looking at the documentation for the Azure App Configuration, I know there's a new preview feature for it, for they call it like hyperscale configuration for Azure Front Door. So that allows you actually to like not to use Azure Front Door, and Azure Front Door talks to the app configuration and the authentication with managed identity. That is possibly something that I thought that could also be useful in scenarios that I asked, and probably the listeners or learners that had some kind of the same thing, because he did mention earlier it actually depends on what you're trying to solve with your configuration. So it's not just about app settings, that JSON that you have in .NET project, but it also involves now in the entire pipeline, as I see it in the big perspective. But thank you for that answer. Interesting. Okay. Have you used the hyperscale configuration, by the way, yet?
Not yet.
This is the one that I'm talking about. It's actually pretty new, but I can share it to the audience. But this is the one that I'm talking about. So it's very interesting.
It can become the next topic for another talk.
Yeah, exactly. Håkan, do you have any question that came in your mind? Because I know you're also in the .NET space and development.
No, not for now. I think we can save it for the Zoom session afterwards.
Yes, exactly. We would like to thank you, David, for your great presentation. And we appreciate your time. No questions so far, but I want to share before we end our stream the link to our Fika. We're actually over time, so to those who wants to ask more follow-up questions after this, there will be this Zoom meeting for like 10-15 minutes if someone shows up. So David and Håkan will be there. And then also, I would like to share about our upcoming session next month, because we're skipping the next session in March. We will be out. We will have again Tore, a .NET developer, also Microsoft MVP from Sweden, coming back to share about how a coding agent works behind the scenes. So really understanding it and how to create a basic MCP server using .NET as well on Azure. So it's an interesting session to watch on April 11 as scheduled. Håkan, anything else?
No, I think that's it. Just thank you, David, for a really great session.
Yes.
Thanks you.
Yeah, we have some thank you from everyone as well that's watching us live and also recorded later, which will be, I saw a few people ask for on-demand links already. Yeah. Okay. Any last final words, David? Any upcoming events and initiatives you want to share?
Well, I'm also part of the Torino.net user group, but it's an in-person event. If some of you know somebody from Turin or Northern Italy that may be happy to join us, well, and if you by yourself want to come to Turin for some events or for meeting or delivering some talks, we are happy to have you, and I will be your guide to the city. It's a nice city. It's worth it.
I will send me your CFP. Maybe if I find time, I'll try to speak at your user group, Håkan, as well. I know Håkan wants me to speak in the .NET user group in Norway. So that's the power of community, helping each other, sharing knowledge and learn from each other. But awesome session today. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, especially this weekend. And also Håkan for being here. Everyone's time is very valuable. So yeah, but I think that's it. Happy weekend, everyone, from us, and I hope you have a great day. And see you again next month in April. And Håkan and I will be back with some good stuff and updates from from the coming weeks. And bye bye.
Thank you.
See you next
Bye.
time. Bye.